This ball is the most expensive football in the world by far. MYSA were the global pioneers on linking sport for development. This was a development project that used football as a starting point. It would start generating its own leaders, who would then become the heroes and role models for the younger generation. Back over here earlier is the UN conference on environment. So I had to write up the report of the results of our committee meeting. So that's late 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Environment and human settlements. And at the top, football, yes. It's 1995. I'm wearing my other hat as an environmental expert, and I'm an advisor to the Southern African Development Community, SADC. So that's, at that time it was the 14 states of South Africa, of Southern Africa. It in fact didn't include South Africa because of the apartheid regime at that time. I put forward the equity-led growth strategy at a meeting of permanent secretaries of environment, but also of finance ministries and planning ministries from around Africa. And the first morning was terrible. Then we had a lunch break. One of the guys who was really hitting me hard was from Zimbabwe. And he came back after lunch and he took the floor, and I thought, uh-oh, here we go again. He's really gonna net him. And you know what he said? While I was at lunch, he said, I went into the bookstore downstairs after I finished my lunch, and I bought the latest issue of Reader's Digest, and I opened it up, and there's a picture of our consultant. And it's a story saying, Miracle in Mathare, and it describes what he's been doing in Kenya, in the slums in Kenya. And so this is not your usual consultant. He's not telling us what we should be doing. He's telling us something that he's already been doing. Putting the poor at the center of the agenda, linking the sport and environment. And so I think we should take this more seriously, what he's proposing. Change the whole meeting. And so the Mathare youth, first of all, taught me about the real nature of poverty. And the real nature of poverty is not $1 a day or $2 a day. It's not a monetary measure. The real nature of policy is having lack of choices. MYSA is the global pioneer and innovator on linking sport, Jualo footballs, with garbage cleanup, environmental cleanups, AIDS prevention. We've tied it to so many other issues as well. Anti-child labor, as you know, we've had a major program on that. And even gender violence and that in the slums. And setting up little slum study halls and libraries in the slums. This was a development project that used football as a starting point. Now there are hundreds of sport for development projects around the world. MYSA is probably the only sports organization in the world where the league standings say games won, draw, lost, garbage cleanup, total points, where you earn points in the league standings when your team is cleaning garbage in the slums. And so that, then cleaning your neighborhood became very popular with the youth because it was one of the things that the adults really praised them for. Unlike most coaches who are, or most chairmen who are watching players they've bought, I'm watching players where the majority of them we developed, and I've known them since they were 11, 12 years old, so it's a different experience. I realized that the most important thing I could do is not provide a football, but help them acquire a sense of self-belief, a sense of self-confidence. And I realized that if I could keep the organization going for a few years at least, it would start generating its own leaders, who would then become the heroes and role models for the younger generation. Because I had, in the 80s, there were no heroes and role models in the slums. There were drug dealers, and the only one who seemed to have money were the ones who were doing the wrong things, not the right things. But I think the biggest change we've made is in the thinking of the youth, who can look and say, there's Dennis Oliech playing in France, or Wanyama playing in England, or Origi playing in Norway. And I can, if I work hard, maybe I can help my family through football, my football skills, to get out of Mathare and out of poverty. But they can look off the field as well. And Patricia Musimyi, now the elected MCA in the last election for Malangwa Kubo Ward. Edward Kanuthia, lawyers, and or even in music. You know, Sarabi, Afro fusion music. So now we have 130,000 or so alumni, many out there succeeding in different professions and careers. And I think that's the biggest change that we've made in Mathare. It's not well enough known, but this ball is, or one exactly like it, is the most expensive football in the world by far. In 2010, a Juala ball was given to Willy Lemke. Willy was then the advisor to the UN Secretary General, and he was the advisor on sport and development. And one of our members, Peter Ndolo, was in Germany, where he comes from, Werder Bremen, and he was doing some internships at the radio station. So he made a Juala ball for Willy. Willy, when he was next in New York, took the Juala ball and gave it to Ban Ki-moon. Ban Ki-moon then went to, in November that year, then went to the International Olympic Committee Congress in Copenhagen, and he made a speech about the importance of sport for development, and he held up Peter's Juala ball. And we have this lovely picture of him doing that. Then he gave the ball to Princess Haya, who was an ambassador for the IOC. She took it back and then put it in an auction for Palestinian children, and it sold for $205,000. They had Venus Williams shirts, they had Roger Federer shirts, they even had Chelsea Football Club shirts signed by all the players. But what got the most money was the Juala ball, made in Mathare Juala ball. And that, the person who bought it, surprisingly enough, didn't keep it. He gave it back to Jacques Roga, the head of the IOC, and that Juala ball, the most expensive ball in the world, is now in the Olympic Museum in a special case in Lausanne. Here's the under-12 boys team. This is the under-14 girls team, and this is the under-16 boys team, and this is 2003. But in the middle of the under-12 team, there's this little white fellow. That's actually John Guidetti, who was added as an extra player because his father was teaching at the Swedish school here in Nairobi. And so he was added as an extra player, so he didn't take the place of a Kenyan MYSA youth, and played for MYSA in the 2003 Norway Cup. And he most recently featured in the Swedish national team in the World Cup. And Guidetti, if you Google him on Wikipedia, he talks about his time in Nairobi and playing for MYSA. He's very proud of it. And then in the back, interestingly enough, we also had the Haba Nahaba music group and drumming and dancing group with us. And there you see some of the music group members who later formed the Harambee Afrofusion group. I think you'll find that a lot of these players, these under 14 players, have been featuring in the national women's team over the last few years as well. The Kenyan national team women that went to AFCON 2 years ago, 18 of the 24 players were from MYSA and the entire technical bench. The coach, the assistant coach, the team manager, the equipment manager, and the physio. We're all from MYSA. Yeah, those are the old days, the good days. And it's still good days. Although we have all these trophies, many trophies in the trophy cabinet, national trophies for competitions here, but also global trophies for the FIFA Football for Hope tournaments. That's still not the most important achievement of MYSA. The most important achievement of MYSA is creating the new heroes and role models for the next generation.